Perfect. So, well, good morning, everyone. We are live. Welcome to today's webinar on how to achieve your renewable energy goals. Today's webinar will be around 20 to 30 minutes long, and we'll be doing a Q&A portion at the very end, so I'd encourage you to stick around for that. Everyone that is signed in is being muted with no video, so if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat box. So that's just right at the bottom of your screen there. So we will be sending out a copy of the recorded webinar to everyone that has registered. So don't worry if you need to step away for a moment or if you end up missing part of the presentation. So for those that haven't met me before, I'm Sharon and I'm the owner of an interior design company called Weaver Design here in Edmonton. We are a full service interior design studio. We offer services ranging from paint consultations, window coverings, construction drawings, project management services, the whole works. We do focus on residential projects, however, we do commercial as well. So I started doing these webinars back in May to help support local businesses here in Edmonton. I had no idea where this was going to go when I first started doing this, but the support has been amazing. So thank you to all of you that have taken the time to watch these webinars and who continue to support us on social media. If you're interested in watching any of our past webinars, you can do that by going over to our website. So weaverdesign.ca/webinar, and you can watch all the recordings there. We also have a YouTube channel, so if you search Weaver Design, that should come up for you. Feel free to subscribe. That way you can stay updated on any new videos that we're posting. But anyway, enough about me. That's obviously not why you registered for this webinar today. So I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker, Jason. Jason is a Certified Master Electrician and the owner of Kite Electric. So welcome, Jason.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Sharon. I appreciate this. This is a great opportunity and I love what you're doing. Your past speakers have been fantastic. I have to say kudos on your selections. This has been great so far, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's been very interesting for me too to talk to all these different businesses, and I'm learning so much every single time that we do it. And I'm excited to chat with you and learn more about your business and what you do and being more energy efficient. So glad to have you.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Well, to get started, can you tell us a little bit about what your professional background is and maybe how you came to start Kite Electric?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a certified master electrician. I've been in electrical for about 10 years, give or take now. I started actually specializing in solar energy back in 2016 at a previous electrical company that I was at. And the funny story, I was walking down there's a festival on 118th Ave, Alberta Avenue called Courtepatte.
Yes,
of course,
very familiar
pre-COVID,
with it.
in the age before COVID, right? Beautiful festival, had a lot of fun with that. In 2014, I was walking through and I saw this trailer covered in solar. I was like, that's super cool. I knew nothing about it at the time. And they had a course listed there that was for electricians. This was from the Solar Energy Society of Alberta. And so 2016, I got my journeyman ticket and I took that course the next month. That was my goal. That was my little ambition for the following years after seeing that trailer. Little did I know I could have taken it at any time, but that's what really sparked me to get into renewable energy and start learning more about it. And from there, I started taking course after course to the point where by the time I had taken so many courses, I was starting to teach courses. And in 2017, I started with a solar energy installation company, teaching courses and filling the role of operations manager after a couple of years. And so through observations, both opportunities and lessons learned, in all the companies I'd worked in, I decided that I actually wanted to dive in, feet first, all the way into owning your own business. And little did I know the roller coaster is real, but
Yes.
So was the gratification, right? I absolutely love this, and being able to specialize in solar energy and specialize in renewable energy really means a lot to me. It really hits home. So that's kind of what drove me to do this and my little path to where I am now.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I had no idea that it kind of got spurred on when you were at the Kaleido Festival there. Like I said, I'm very familiar with that festival. Kind of a fun fact, I do stilt walking on the side, and that's a festival I usually am a part of every year. Seriously? So you might have even seen me there. And I remember actually seeing, there was a booth that was doing the solar panels, and they had like this oven that was set up, and they were making cookies at this festival, all using solar power. So that was
Yep,
really
exactly. So that probably would have been the Solar Energy Society's booth.
cool.
They
Yeah,
always have the solar oven going. They got a couple cool things happening. They're a fun group to deal with.
very cool. So I know you mentioned that you're a fully certified electrical contracting company, and you obviously offer so much more than that and going into more of the renewable energy side of things. So can you tell us a little bit more of maybe some of the other services that you offer and like what your focus is?
Sure. Yeah. So Kite Electric is a certified electrical contractor first. That's our primary thing. We just happen to be really, really good at solar. So it's a nice specialization that we do. But aside from that, any sort of residential, commercial maintenance, commercial upgrades, tenant improvements, restaurant renovations, those are still things that we do as electricians, right? Those are the things that effectively, well, pay the bills over the winter, right? Outside of solar season. We also do electric vehicle charging stations, as we're a Tesla certified installer. So we do Tesla home wall connectors, as well as any other EV charging system. It doesn't have to be brand specific. Solar installations, as we've talked about, and we'll get into a little bit more in a bit. And then energy efficiency improvements. This is one that we're starting to see a really large uptick on, is businesses that are looking to cut expenses as much as they can with the least amount of investment possible, which is a pretty common request. But everybody asks, well, do I jump straight to solar, or other improvements that can be made? And typically I'll recommend LED upgrades as an easy one, right? The ROI on LED upgrades is under 10 years. It's a pretty quick and easy thing to do. And it's an immediate noticeable improvement on your energy bills and your working space as well. So outside of those things, there's a couple little oddball services on the side, like advanced drone operations, where I'm an advanced RPA pilot with Transport Canada, because you need that license to fly a commercial drone.
Right.
The fines are quite steep. So we offer those services on the side as well. I also have a requirement as a master electrician to offer second opinion consultations on electrical work, and offer quotes, upgrades, recommendations for any of that as well.
Okay, that's very cool. It sounds like you do quite the variety of services there. That's very neat.
Well, and then without getting into our newest little division called Kite Ag Systems, where we start getting into vertical farming and custom container growing solutions and indoor farming, that's a whole different conversation for another day.
Yeah, I remember chatting with you a little bit about that. I'm very interested to learn some more on that. So if anyone has questions on it, again, put that in the chat box and we'll be happy to talk about it a bit more. So, obviously things have been very, there's definitely this green movement that's happening right now. People are becoming a lot more aware of the amount of waste that they're producing. They're being a little bit more conscious about the products and materials that they're specifying to be more sustainable and have less of that impact on our environment. So for those that are looking to be more green, or just looking to reduce, like you said, those ongoing electrical costs, what are some alternative energy solutions that people can use, whether it's residential, commercial?
Well, some of the easiest ones to implement are, as I mentioned, LED upgrades. So swapping out your existing halogen or fluorescent lights for LED, putting in timers or dimmers, or some form of lighting management system or energy control system, just so that things aren't running when you don't need them to be running. So I often get asked to be putting in timers or occupancy sensors in bathrooms, garages, basements, things like that. So it's convenient, because if you get up the stairs and forget to turn the light off, it's not that big a deal. But it also reminds you to be energy conscious as it turns off on a regular time. Those are kind of the quick and easy things to be doing to lower your energy bills, aside from kind of, turn the thermostat down a little bit, put low flow tap filters in, and low flow shower heads to reduce that energy used to heat that water. I always try to push energy efficiency before generation, right? So lowering those energy bills, lowering that energy usage, means that if you then take the next step towards microgeneration, be it solar, wind, hydro, whatever, if you decide to take that next step, you're having to offset less energy. Therefore, your system doesn't have to be as large. Therefore, it's going to cost a little less, right? So by putting these energy efficiency improvements in place ahead of time, you're not only reducing your current electrical costs, but reducing the costs of future generation upgrades. So
Right.
that's what I'd recommend would be the first step, is are those efficiency upgrades.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, those are pretty easy things that anyone can take on. And then of course it can go past that, which we'll get to shortly.
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot about solar panels, which is why I'm glad to have you here today to talk a little bit about that. And I'm sure that's why a lot of people are watching this today. I don't really know how they operate. We have one that we use for our camping just to keep our battery charged while we're doing those longer trips. We've talked about doing some solar panels on our roof at some point. So I'm glad to have you to talk about that. So for those that are interested in maybe doing some solar panels as that alternative energy source, is there anyone that can't have solar? Like maybe they live in an area that doesn't get a lot of sun exposure, can be quite cloudy all the time, maybe they get a lot of rain like Vancouver, maybe it's a climate that gets quite hot, obviously not Edmonton. But is there such a thing as too much sun? Is there anyone that cannot have solar on their roof?
Solar can quite literally be installed anywhere the sun shines.
Okay.
Whether there be cloud, whether there be shade, whatever the case. I mean, it's obviously not going to produce as well as in a location that has direct sunlight all the time.
Right.
But we're actually doing an installation right now where a portion of the customer's roof is shaded from about 10 to about 10:30 in the morning, give or take, just due to the orientation of the house. And it's for that little portion that their system is going to have a little bit of reduced production. As long as we account for that little notch in production, we can still get a pretty good estimate of what that system is going to produce over a period of time. So really, solar can be installed anywhere so long as you understand that it's going to be more efficient in some locations than other. That's kind of what it can be boiled down to. So out in the middle of nowhere, there's lots of installations on SCADA monitoring facilities or remote oil wells or gas wells that use solar because it's too expensive to truck out diesel and have generators running all the time, right? And their monitoring equipment is quite limited in its electrical requirements. So something like that is a perfect application. Cabins, lakeside cabins, perfect again. Instead of spending, $50,000 to $90,000 running power in from the nearest utility, having an off-grid solar installation makes a lot more sense, right? RVs, another perfect example. Charging up and topping up your batteries. These big Class A motorhomes with a 1 kilowatt array on top or 4 modules up on the roof is a perfect application for solar. And those are, of course, outside of the common residential and commercial applications.
That's still great things to think about if you are more in that remote area and running power to your trailer, your cabin, your home. If you're out in the country, it's a lot more challenging. So if there's ways you can offset that, obviously that helps out. So you touched a little bit on this, but when you're having those initial conversations with your client, are you able to kind of anticipate how much energy they're going to be generating over the course of that year? Like, do you have that conversation with your clients so they know what that expectation is?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of our process includes a full quote and proposal that talks about estimated system generation and estimated system capacity. So typically what we'll do is we'll talk to a homeowner, and as a matter of fact, do you happen to have your home energy bill available? What did you use for energy last month?
I can look up my last. Do you want just the most recent?
Yeah, sure. Just the most recent. Just a little exercise in calculations here.
It was 1021.
1021. So 1,021 kilowatt hours used last month. I realized last month was August, so it's going to be a little bit high. But if we take that as an annual average over 12 months, that puts us at about 12,000 kilowatt hours over the course of a year. So we use that number as an estimate. Now, we do have to contact EPCOR or Fortis or ATCO and get accurate data when we actually do the applications. But for the purposes of the conversation, we use that 12,000 kilowatt hours and say, in the city of Edmonton, we receive about 1,200 what are called sun hours. It's a measurement of energy output by the sun. And that data is actually available through Environment Canada. It's a big spreadsheet. It's about 50,000 rows long. And it has data for every municipality across Canada. I know, right? So if you filter it through to Edmonton, you get about 1,200 sun hours here in Edmonton. So the rough math would tell me that if you're using 12,000 kilowatt hours a year, and I divide that by the sun hours, you need about a 10 kilowatt system, give or take. This is what I affectionately refer to as napkin math, simply because it's conversation points. We'll crunch the data later in the proposal and you'll have all the real numbers in front of you. But we'd be looking at about a 10 kilowatt array. Now, whether or not your roof can support that or has the space for it, that's going to determine how large of a system we can actually install.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
But I can't actually install a system any larger than what your usage was last year. Those are rules set in place by the Microgeneration Act.
Okay, that's very interesting. Like structurally, is it ever an issue that your roof can't support the load of the solar panels? I have no idea how heavy they even are.
Not typically. Safe working loads are built into roof structures, and we actually work with a structural engineer to get every installation signed off, and we need a certificate on every installation to ensure that the roof can support the additional load.
Okay. And are you typically using both sides of the roof, or are you just using the one that's more efficient for the direction?
Depends. South is best. East and west, you're going to lose maximum about 10% in efficiency if you're putting installations. So say you've got a bungalow that faces east and west, right? I'd usually split the array, put half on either side, or put all of it on the east side. It's very situational.
Okay, good to know. And just going on that topic, can you kind of walk us through what a typical installation looks like? I know you talked a little bit about the design process with knowing the calculations for knowing how many solar panels are needed and kind of where they would go. But for those that are maybe considering doing this kind of thing, what would that process look like?
Sure. So typically, a good process for me always starts with a good customer consultation. That's step number one. I need to find out why you're interested in solar, what your goals are, and what your expected outcomes are going to be from this installation, right? That's going to allow me to tailor the proposal to not only meet but exceed those particular objectives that you're looking to do, right? I could be throwing information at somebody till the cows come home, but I want to make sure that I tailor it to meet your specific needs. So one of the biggest things for me is respecting the knowledge and experience of the client. Respecting the fact that they may have done a little bit of research or none at all. And there's going to be some instruction involved. They're going to need to learn a little bit about this. They're interested about it, but I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts necessarily, but they need to understand how it's going to impact their energy usage and what other steps can be taken in parallel with the solar installation.
Right.
The other thing for me during this customer consultation is professionalism is non-negotiable. That's the biggest thing for me. I keep a very high standard of my site visits. My sales manager has a very high standard that I expect from her as well. And we make sure that's part of the process to maintain a good customer consultation experience, right? So we'll do a walk through the property, make sure we get all their energy usage, make sure we talk through the client through the process and they're comfortable through the entire process as well. And then we put together a code compliant design quote, we go into negotiations, and then we talk about financing. Once that's all taken care of, we start up the project. So that involves an interconnection application with the wire services provider, permit applications, structural certificates, material ordering. That whole process gets rolling. And then it only takes about 3 or 4 days, give or take, to do the actual install, depending on the system size. But it takes about a month all in from signing the quote to final walkthrough. Just because a lot of that is waiting for applications and stuff to come back from the city and authorities and so on, right? After everything's installed, we do a full commissioning, interconnection completion, finish the permitting, install monitoring, and do a system training walkthrough with the client. There's nothing worse than having something installed and you have no idea what it is. People are, at this point, people that are installing solar, I'm finding, are very, very excited about this technology. And they're very excited to talk to their friends and family about it. So I want to make sure they have all the right lingo, jargon, whatever, to be able to share what it is that's been installed in their house, right? And then after that, it's follow-up and ongoing support to make sure that their system's producing what it should. We usually do 6-month and annual checkups, just to make sure that they're still happy, there's no issues, and the remote monitoring tells us if there's any problems we need to deal with and dispatch a service call on.
Okay. Yeah, I like your process. So you seem like you're very engaged with your client, and you make sure that everyone is understanding the process, that's what's going to happen, there's no surprises, and then you're still also making sure they're educated as well so that they can talk about it with their friends and family and they know exactly what they now have and how to properly use it. And yeah, I think that's great. So important, right? Is making sure everyone's on the same page, and
Exactly.
communication, I always say, is like the #1 thing for any business.
Yeah.
So I want to challenge you a little bit. Obviously, there's so many other electrical contractors out there. I mean, every business has their set of competition out there. So what sets you apart from the competition?
This, you know what, and I've learned it's referred to as the unique selling proposition, or the USP, and it's one thing that I've kind of struggled with, honestly, in starting this company and determining exactly what that is, to not just say, well, I'm different from everybody else. How is Kite Electric actually different from everybody else, right? Because if it puts the onus on me, then that really stunts the company's growth, as opposed to identifying what the company is and how it's different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of that is instilling policies and getting everybody in the company behind the same ideals and behind the same policies to ensure that everybody's acting in one harmonious structure. So that becomes the unique selling proposition of the company, right? And part of that is the professionalism and customer relations. Huge for me. I spent a long time looking for my sales manager, who is somebody that is personable, knows sales inside and out, and can really establish a customer relation that goes a long, long way in the sales process, long after the contract has been signed, right? And again, going back to respecting the client's knowledge and experience, and professionalism being non-negotiable. Those are absolutely key elements to Kite Electric and how we operate, all the way down to our first-year apprentices, right? I also have a lot of instructional experience. I've been teaching solar design and installation since about 2017, 5-day hands-on training courses. And I've also developed my own 5-day hands-on training course that I'm now actually teaching across Canada.
Good for you.
And lately it's been by video conference, which is nice, but that instructional component really adds to the extra degree of professionalism and industry experience that I can share with customers, to give them the, I guess, the comfort knowing that, well, we know what we're talking about, right?
Right. You would think professionalism would just be a given for any business, but it's definitely not. So that definitely is something that would set you apart for sure. Awesome. Well, does anyone have any questions for Jason? I'll check the chat box here. Again, feel free to put any of your questions in the chat box since you are muted. I do have a few that came in just on the registration form, so in the meantime, we can go through that. So one question that came in was, can the fee for installing solar panels be a lien on the house and transferred between owners if there is a change in title?
Yeah, so I think what that question is referring to is what's called the property assessed clean energy financing, or PACE financing. And PACE is an interesting idea, because it takes a clean energy improvement and applies it to the tax assessment on the property. And it doesn't necessarily apply to the individual. When the individual moves, the tax assessment then, or the loan rather, stays with the property. So the new buyer continues paying into that loan. And it's a program that's put in place and requires municipal and provincial buy-in to actually work. And we have gotten to the point where within Alberta, the Act to Enable Clean Energy Improvements was passed on June 6 in 2018. Right after that, the government consulted with stakeholder groups to develop the guiding Clean Energy Improvements Regulation, which is going to lead towards a clean energy improvement program that municipalities are going to be able to buy into, and develop a distribution method for, so that individuals within municipalities can take advantage of that program and apply a clean energy improvement onto their tax assessment.
Okay. And I hope that answers
short answer,
question.
Yes.
The short answer, nice. So another solar panel question for you. There seems to be a few on that. One is, can hail or snow damage solar panels?
That one is by far my favorite question. I constantly get asked that one. Not typically. So there are actually 2 IEC standards that are standard testing conditions that solar modules have to go through to get their UL or CSA certifications. And they're IEC 61215 and 61646. And those IEC standards require that 11 hailstones, scientifically manufactured to 0.98 inches or 25 millimeters, and these hailstones are fired at a module 11 times across the module at 82 kilometers per hour. So picture a 1-inch hailstone at 82 kilometers an hour hitting the surface of this module straight on, and it still has to produce within 5% of its original power rating with no physical damage in place.
Wow.
So really, if it gets down to it, if there's larger than 1-inch hailstones falling faster than 82 kilometers an hour, can almost guarantee that the solar modules are going to be the least of your concerns.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna have a lot more problems for sure.
Exactly.
Do you know from like an insurance standpoint, does your insurance costs go up when you have solar? Who do you go through if you do end up having solar damage?
That's a great question, and I'm kind of working with a couple insurance brokers to develop some actual literature on that, because it really depends on which insurance company you're with.
Okay.
I've come across some clients where the insurance company won't even touch a solar installation with a 10-foot stick. They say you're on your own to replace it. Others say no charge, it's included in your home insurance costs. And then other companies have been requesting that it be insured as an ancillary structure, and others still just increase your home premiums a little bit. So there's no real standardization on how the insurance plays and how hail can be applied to that premium. That's a conversation you'd have to have with your own insurance provider. But I am working on doing a little bit of a comparison between some providers.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little frustrating that it's not standard amongst providers. So I guess just a thing to note that if you are looking at having these solar panels installed, that you do talk to your insurance provider and make sure that you are properly covered for it. Because yeah, obviously hate for that to happen. Another solar panel question for you. Can they be recycled? So I guess that's speaking to if when technology changes and these solar panels are going to improve down the road, and maybe you're looking at getting rid of the ones that you currently have, what do you do with those existing panels?
Great question. So short answer is there's really no solid evidence or solid information on that right now either. There are recycling facilities, there are processes being tested, there is some data starting to be compiled on that, but truth be told, there's solar modules that are still operating that were built in the 50s. So we're not 100% sure when these things are all going to start crashing to the ground and need recycling. But what we've been finding is that a solar module is made out of about 2 or 3 main components, one being the glass, the silicon squares or silicon cells inside, a plastic backsheet, and an aluminum frame. That's about 95% of what a solar module is. So when these get recycled, we can recover about 95% of the glass. We can recover 100% of the aluminum because it does just come right off the side of the frame. We can recover about 85% of the silicon crystal that's used to manufacture the cells. And we can recover about 100% of the hard metals that are used in the electronics in these modules. And so 80% of the modules overall are going to be reused or recycled in some method or another. And that's just going to get better and better over time. Right. By about 2030, we're estimating a $40 million increase or a $40 million value of recycled modules that will have been recycled. And that's about 60 million new modules that are going to be made from recycled modules. Wow. Right? Translates to about 16 gigawatts of extra capacity that these are going to be able to generate by recycling old modules.
Well, that's good to know that it's not only are you being more energy efficient by having them, but you can also properly dispose of them afterwards, right?
Exactly. Yep.
That's a pretty high number. I'm surprised by that. Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions in the chat group. Everyone's being pretty quiet this morning. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar was being recorded, so I'll be sending out a copy of the recorded webinar along with our contact information to anyone that has registered. Of course, it's going to go up on our social media platforms as well, so you can find it on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all the typical platforms. Again, it's on YouTube, so feel free to watch it again, share it out with anyone that you think might be interested in this topic, and just could watch it with us live today. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jason. How do they contact you if they want to reach out? I mean, obviously, it'll be in the email, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Be in the email, kiteelectric.ca. creatively, jason@kiteelectric.ca is my email.
Easy.
I know that's a tough one. And then those are the best ways to get a hold of us. We can open a conversation. We can talk about site assessments, any other questions. Again, with the training course that I offer, I love teaching. I love instructing. I love answering questions. And I don't always know the answers, but given a little bit of time to research, I can definitely find them for you and at least be able to vet the answers to make sure that they're applicable to the situation. So I highly encourage anybody with any additional solar questions or residential, commercial, costing, anything like that, fire off an email. I'll certainly see what I can do to help.
Perfect. Yeah. So anyone that just didn't feel comfortable putting any questions in the chat group, or you walk away a little bit later and you're like, oh, I should have asked that, reach out to Jason. Again, I'll be sending that out to you. So thank you again, Jason, for being our guest speaker today. I learned a ton from you. I'll definitely be passing this on to my fiance as well, because we're definitely interested in doing some solar at some point too. So
fantastic.
very
well, thank
informative.
you so much for the opportunity, Sharon. This has been an absolute treat. And yeah, I look forward to any questions or comments that come afterwards.
Perfect. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone to watch this or that watched this live today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.